Hi, I'm Philip Nothard, Customer Insight and Strategy Director here at Cox Automotive. Welcome to my first of the quarterly industry vlogs to look at some of the industry trends that we've faced during the last quarter, talk about some of the hot topics that are in the market at the minute, and sort of talk about some of the predictions and what we're facing in the industry as we look at the months ahead. This time I'll kick off with looking at Q1 2019 and particularly what's been happening around that new car market in the first quarter of the year. So as you know, we're still facing some of the uncertainty and challenges around what's happening in the political market around Brexit. If you actually look at diesel registrations, year to date we're down 20.3% in terms of year on year. For diesel registrations, that's 48,000 less diesels registered in 2019. And if you take that back a little bit further and look at 2015, 2016 versus 17 and 18, that's 745,000 units less registered of diesels in the market. That will have a significant impact as we start looking at the used car market going ahead. So as we look at the new car figures and actually look at that fleet market around WLTP and the taxation in that company car sector, fleet market has been reported as in Q1 being 0.9% down. If you remove things like the demonstrations, the manufacturer cars and some of the daily rental, and actually look at the fleet market in isolation, that's 138,000 registrations. And actually on a year-to-date basis, that's down 10%. So we are seeing a significant impact from the WLTP changes that we've seen there and the impact of the company car tax and what's happening in that sector on the fleet registrations. So what about used cars? Used cars has been the focus for many retailers now through 2018 and very much into 2019 in the first quarter of the year. So as we've seen the decline in the new car market, it's forcing the dealer market into the used cars and after sales. So look at Q1. Back in February of this year, Cox Automotive, we did forecast that we do expect to see just over 2 million used car transactions in the first quarter of 2019. And although that is a slight decline that we do see versus last year, this will be the fourth time that we will see in excess of 2 million registrations or transactions in the first quarter of the year. But actually what is happening there is because of the impact of the fleet market and the lower volumes coming into the sector through fleet in the wholesale, we are seeing a lot of focus and a lot of high demand for that grade 1 and grade 2 vehicles, the ready to retail stock that everybody wants. And it's actually forcing some of the smaller retailers into the grade 3 and grade 4s and increasing the necessity to look for vehicle preparation and longer lead times to get those cars ready to retail. So with that in mind, I've asked Andy Condy, General Manager of Manheim UK Auctioneers team, to share some of his top tips for vendors and buyers of maximising the return for their vehicles through the wholesale sector.
Hi, I'm Andy Condy and I'm the General Manager of our great team of auctioneers here at Manheim. I'm going to give you some tips today of what I believe are the top 5 golden rules when you come to dispose of your vehicles. Number 1, we are really seeing a game of two halves at the moment. We know that grade 1 and grade 2 vehicles are selling really well and are achieving cap clean prices. It's the others that are a concern. Grade 3 vehicles are really on the periphery, but anything over really does need to be looked at. So don't be afraid to have to refurb and spend a little bit of money because you will get that money back. Number 2, vendor representation is key. We will see vehicles making £200 or £300 more once those golden words of on sale are uttered. Number 3, I always say the first bid is often the best bid. I know us auctioneers always say that, but you know what? Don't lose the opportunity. Number 4, don't get stuck in a rut. Remember to move the vehicles around. Remember, London are now seeing the ultra low emission zones, and that will ultimately affect diesel prices there. Move them out of London. Go to Bristol, go to Gloucester, go elsewhere, but move them around. Don't be afraid to do that. And finally, trust the auctioneer. Yes, I would say that, wouldn't I? But you know what? Sometimes, and most of the time, we do know what we're talking about. And please, work with us. We want to work with you, and we will do our best for you at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. So let's talk about some of the hot topics and some of the conversations that have been taking place through the first quarter of this year. We've got to talk about the B word and the day that didn't happen on the 29th of March and what impact that has had. It still created some uncertainty and lack of confidence from consumers across the market, although many retailers are focusing on the day-to-day business. But what did happen, and we did see a little bit of that activity in the new car market, what we talked about earlier, and that's where a lot of the vehicles came into the UK ahead of the risk of the taxation rules that were being reported that may happen on the 29th of March. And those vehicles came into the UK, got put into storage and compounds and were getting ready for taxation. We did, as I say, see a little bit of that activity at the end of March, not a lot. So those vehicles will still need to be registered at some point in the UK. They are right-hand drive, they are to UK specification. We do expect to see that activity take place. And as the longer the uncertainty takes, then we are going to see this lack of confidence from the consumer market still impact that new cars. Luckily enough, as we talked about the used cars before, we are still seeing strength in the used car market. So what about Q2 and what's going to happen about the next 3 months of the year? As we say, new car registrations, we do expect to see them fairly flat. We saw the 3.4% in March, we've seen a 2.4% in Q1. And obviously the private market was actually held fairly strong in the first quarter. So the private market is staying steady at the minute. It is the fleet market that seems to be changing the performance and what's happening around that. And as we know, that's been driven by WLTP and the taxation rules around company car. That may start to soften as the clarity comes around the taxation rules and the fleet sector becomes a little bit more confident and gets those registrations back into the marketplace. And hopefully that will then start to generate some quality used cars coming back into the wholesale sector. So in terms of used cars for the second quarter of the year and what to expect in the months ahead, we've already talked around the expectations that we see in the first quarter of the year with over 2 million transactions potentially taking place. We don't expect that to slow as we move into the second quarter. What is a topic of conversation, and has been for some time, is margin retention from the retailers. They are under a lot of pressure at the minute on margin and the pressures that are taking place. Some of that is down to increased costs from utility costs, etc. But also the majority of it is by that retail competitors that we're starting to see. As everybody turns from new car focus into used car focus, we've seen a lot of growth in that sector. And some of that is also caused by having to purchase grade 1 and grade 2 vehicles at a higher price, or moving into the grade 3 and 4 vehicles. And we don't expect that to change. What we are seeing as well with some of that is a strategic move from some of the larger groups saying that they are looking at volume at the expense of margin, and they understand that and they're moving the volumes through. What is positive from our recent dealer sentiment survey, though, is in terms of the economic conditions and the challenge that we've been facing in that market, that actually 46% do expect the economic conditions to either improve or remain the same over the coming months. So we see that as a fairly good positive move from the dealers, that they are looking ahead for the next quarter. In terms of the new car market, we do expect that to remain fairly flat for the second quarter of the year as the economic uncertainty and the challenges facing that sector continue through the second quarter. But hopefully we'll start to see some of the clarification around the taxation rules and the costings that are impacting the fleet market at the minute, and see the end of the WLTP impact that's been hit in that sector. And in terms of used cars, we'll see the results from the first quarter. That will continue through the second quarter as we move through the coming months, and the strength and resilience of the market. We have seen mergers and acquisitions throughout the year so far. That is set to continue, and we'll see a lot more of that as we move through the remainder of the year. So just remains me to thank you for watching today. If there's anything particular you would like us to talk about when we do the next vlog for the second quarter of the year, please don't hesitate to contact me direct. Send me some ideas and some thoughts about it, and hopefully you found today's vlog interesting and helpful.